Welcome to Beware of Spoilers. I am Adam, and we are here to discuss The Northman, which is Robert Eggers' latest movie. This one is a fairly faithful adaptation of Hamlet with Vikings. I guess Hamlet... No, I think Hamlet... It's been years since I read it, but I think Hamlet's designed to take place around the time it was written, which would be about the 1400s. This takes place in the 800s. I want to say it was like 845 or something like that. 845 CE. So it is pretty straightforward, unless you're the two guys. And let me just point this out. So I'm going to this movie, and as you know, it's a pretty... Here's the thing. I'm a pretty, I don't want to say relaxed person. However, if you're going to go to a movie, I'd say try to be on time. I feel like that's a pretty reasonable, request. Try to be on time to the movie. Don't show up about 45 minutes into the movie, because not only that, but there are also trailers. So when you show up 45 minutes into a movie, you're really like an hour late somehow, which tells me that these two were in the wrong theater. I think that these two idiots paid for the Dolby one, because the Dolby one started at 7, this one started at 6. I think they ended up in the wrong theater somehow. I'm not entirely sure how they fucked that up, but they ended up in the wrong theater, Theater 17 instead of Theater 1. Regardless, I guess it is possible that when you go into the theater, if you go to the left, the first one on the left, that is definitely what fucking happened. These two morons. Working it out in my head, because the whole time I'm sitting there, I'm like, these two motherfuckers. So they come in about 45 minutes into the movie, which now it all kind of lines up. And they show up late, and they're sitting up, in their setting. And the thing is, I always go out of my way to, get seats far away from people. Especially if we're at a screening where there's no one else at the screening when I buy the ticket. If I buy the ticket, I try to go up, top row, far off to the sides. That way I'm not annoying anyone with my oneness at the movie, because I usually go right from work. Because not only am I, there, but also one person throws off the entire alignment, so it's not like I'll go, one from the side and be that asshole who's like, well, now there's one seat here, who's going to take it? I try to go out of my way to avoid doing that. So, I'm sitting here, and and these two guys walk in. They walk in late, and I'm, and they're talking the entire way through the movie, not paying attention, talking the entire way through the movie. Not that you particularly need to pay attention, considering this is a story that's been done to death, considering it is, and not only is it Hamlet, but Hamlet, you can make the case that Hamlet itself is a biblical story. This criticism, or this and how it's probably been done before, but the story of Hamlet is kind of loosely similar to the story of Moses. Because it's it is the story of a guy who, he is the rightful, king, and then he comes back, frees his people from, in this case he does it here too, he frees his people from bondage, and then he goes, takes on the king, and then after he does that, he delivers to the promised land, but he himself can't go, so it is kind of that same kind of thing. But even if you don't want to read Shakespeare, because Shakespeare is too dense for you, which, fine, there are Shakespeare. I've read Shakespeare. Look, there are better ways to get through Shakespeare besides, reading the plays, because that's the thing about the plays. This was explained to me in high school, and I feel like it's not explained to a lot of people. The plays are meant to be watched, not meant to be read. If you watch it, it works a lot better than reading it. I feel like that explanation makes it a lot more palatable, understanding that you are reading a play instead of reading reading a novel, which it's two different reading styles. So, it is one of those things where, if you haven't read Shakespeare, you may have probably seen one of the two iterations of The Lion King, which is the same story. Dune is a very similar story. Maybe you didn't see Dune, because, Dune only had part one. It didn't have the climax in the movie, where Paul goes back, and spoilers for anyone who has not seen Dune 1984, not read Dune, the book from 1965, or and is waiting for Dune Part 2 to come out next October. But when he goes back and takes control of the Empire by unseating Emperor Shaddam and marrying Princess Irulan, it is kind of the same thing. It's not 100% the same thing, and quite honestly, no two are identical. But you get a lot of the same story beats in them. So these two assholes, the entire time, are talking at least 3 times during the screening. They get up and walk out of the movie, and then come back and continue their less funny version of what's it called, Waldorf and Statler in the back row, 2 seats away from me in this theater. And they're doing their thing. They're enjoying the movie. I guess that what they're doing is, enjoying the movie. But the thing is, it's and I've said this before, I don't understand why people buy movie tickets to talk through the movie. Because the thing is, if I'm going to the movies to watch a movie, I am paying a not unsubstantial amount of money for it. I have A-list, so I'm paying $25 a month. I'm going as many times a week as you hear this podcast for movies. But getting to the movies, the time commitment to go, and then if you buy snacks, which I usually don't at this point, but they did, because that was one of their multiple trips out of the fucking theater to go get snacks, and they go and do that, and it's one of those things where it's I don't quite understand why you would pay to do that when 3 months from now, 4 months from now, this exact movie will be available for, considering its opening night, I would say half the price in total. You'll be able to see this movie in the comfort of your own home, make all the dumbass comments you want, and complain about not understanding the movie. Because then that was the real kicker, was not the fact that they did this, and they were like this the entire way through. It was the fact that I'm sitting there, and these two go to me at the end of the movie, because I'm sitting closest to them, because they decided to buy seats 2 seats away from me, assuming they're in the right place, which I would guarantee they're not. They go to me and are like, "Oh, does that movie make any sense to you?" And I'm like, notwithstanding the fact that I have familiarity with the source material, notwithstanding any of that, it's a pretty straightforward, plot-driven movie, if you're there for the entire movie. And if you're not, I'm not saying you have to pay attention really to understand it, but it is a pretty straightforward movie. Unlike Robert Eggers' last, entries, if you walked out of the lighthouse and you're like, I have no idea what the fuck happened there, that's an understandable, thing to happen. If you walked out of that movie and didn't understand it, understandable. Same thing with The Witch. If you walked out of The Witch and you were like, what the fuck did I just watch? Completely understandable. This one, very straightforward. Very much a straight adaptation of Hamlet. Unlike the straight adaptation from Joel Cohen we had earlier this year of Macbeth, this one's a lot more gory, and he's like, yeah, it was good, but I didn't understand it. And I'm like, and he's like, do you understand? I'm like, yeah, it's just Hamlet. Literally, you're watching Hamlet, but with Vikings. And that's not a dismissal of the movie, it's Hamlet with Vikings. And because it's such a straightforward adaptation, when I talk about what works for this movie and what doesn't work for this movie, the important thing to realize is, like with the tragedy of Macbeth, this is about what they use the visual medium for. And how are they bringing that to it? And this movie does it very well. There are a lot of really cool tracking shots and a lot of really cool long takes that, allow for, building tension over the course of it. The acting is all great. I think it's Alexander Skarsgård in the lead. Ethan Hawke is a very small role. He's fantastic as well. And then there's also, what's his name that also does a great job. Nicole Kidman's great. Anya Taylor-Joy, also great in the movie. And, it all around, this movie works on just about every level that it has to. And the plot is not confusing. It is very straightforward. Guy, he's a kid and he's, deemed to be the successor to the throne. His father's brother comes and attempts to murder him. Murders the dad and then tries to have him murdered. He fucks off to, He fucks off to, another country, builds himself up, comes back to get revenge, and then eventually, kills everyone, and then he himself dies while fighting the person he vowed vengeance against. And it is very straightforward, and very, not simple, but it works within the context of the movie. And if you watch the movie, it will make sense. And I feel like I'm more annoyed than I usually am, only because after all of that, I think that it's like if they were just the assholes who were like, oh, it didn't make sense, and were making comments themselves on the way out, I would have just dismissed it as two assholes who were doing that. Like yesterday when I saw The Unbearable Weight of Massive Talent, there was a guy who was a few rows in front of me who was actively browsing his LinkedIn profile while he was sitting in this movie, and I'm like, you can't just wait until after. Like, if it's really this important for you to get a job, maybe skip the movie, or just wait until after the movie is over, considering we're seeing the movie at 6 o'clock on a Thursday. It's the business day is over, just wait until the next, I don't know. Maybe it's just me, and maybe it's just a feeling that common courtesy has gone out the window, but that's the kind of thing that yesterday I kind of just, dismissed, because it's just, they're an asshole. But the fact that you then go and be like, I don't understand it, like, yeah, well, what do you want me to do? Like, sit here and spoon feed it to you? And I'm like, I literally just, like, my response to him when he said, did you understand the movie? I'm like, yeah, it's Hamlet. How much more do you want me to say? Like, how much, like, I just feel kind of confused about all of this. So, yeah, I mean, the movie's great. There's a certain primal, ferocity to it that's kind of reminiscent of The Revenant and, to a lesser extent, The Last Duel, in that final scene where Adam Driver and Matt Damon are having to fight to the death. You get a little bit of that here, a little bit of that there, but this one, it kind of hits a lot more home. It doesn't have that cringe factor, in terms of the violence that The Revenant did. Like, to this day, watching Leonardo DiCaprio get raped by that bear, and also watching that fight at the end between Tom Hardy and Leonardo DiCaprio, that image is forever seared in my brain. That image of Tom Hardy grabbing his leg, crawling up his body, and then grabbing the knife and plunging it into the back of his knee is... I remember being in the theater and being like, oh my god. Like, I think I saw that one. That's it in the theater. Oh no, I saw it in the theater and then bought the 4K after. But it's like, forever, that will be seared in my brain, seeing that for the first time, because it's just horrific to an extent, to see someone do that to another person. It's just, when I watch this movie, I just kind of feel like I'm, it's got that to it, and it's like, it's got a lot of blood and a lot of gore, and it kind of works to its favor. There is one thing, and this is a bit of a spoiler, for those who don't want to know this level of detail about the movie, which is understandable. The guy, at one point, he gets captured, and his father is kind of, they kind of do a lot of stuff with Norse mythology, as evident by what the movie is, but he, the father, it kind of appears to be pseudo-divinely endowed by Odin himself, and what happens is, at one point, he's captured and tied up by his uncle who killed his father, and while he's tied up, like, ravens come in and free him and that's the thing too. It's like, without that context, that scene, I understand that scene can be confusing if you miss the first hour, 45 minutes to an hour of the movie. The ravens come in and free him, and then he leaves, and then it's like, okay, that's cool. And then it's like, what happens is he comes to, to murder him because he's still supposed to be tied up. And, like, this whole flock of people come with him, like, yeah, we're going to get our revenge and kill him. And they get into the room, and he's not there, but there's a bunch of ravens. Now, I'm no religious scholar by any stretch of the imagination, but if something like that happened, especially considering the raven's role for Odin as, like, his pet, or I guess we'll say, like, stand, like, considering that role, and considering all of that, I think if I walked into the room and was like, oh, we were holding this guy here, and now there are 7 of the thing that, God himself has as his, his animal that he uses as a messenger, like, I would be like, I'm out, I've done my part, I am having none of this because it is obvious that I'm on the wrong side. And the thing is, too, it's like, the movie did inspire me to kind of want to go back and look into how Christianity meshed with with Norse paganism, because there is a little bit of overlap there where the way it's portrayed, it seems a little bit like it's unclear as to how much of that's historically accurate in terms of the paganism and the Catholicism kind of blending a little bit, because, like, at one point, I'm fairly certain, well, then again, no, but the character that does it, who crosses herself, is also a former slave who came from somewhere else. The idea that she, the idea that she is, she is a Christian and would cross herself makes sense in that context. That's a good point. I didn't think of that. So maybe it isn't a blend as much as as much as it's, she is there for that reason. It's a really good movie, though, notwithstanding my complaints, but my complaints are all regarding several people in the theater who are acting like, children, I guess. I don't want to say children, because I think children can be better behaved in a movie, but, come on, you can't go to a movie and not see it, and not watch the movie and then be like, that was stupid. So I do think I figured out what happened there, and, so if you have not seen The Northman yet, definitely see The Northman, and the thing is, too, it uses a kind of muted color scheme, but not in a way where it's like, this is designed to make the movie look serious, like a certain DC film director uses it, where it's like, see, we're taking this seriously because there's no color on Superman's costume. See, it's, muted, it's blues, it is, it's not, it is a serious, very, very serious movie. And for that to be the case, and for it to work here, it works because, there are sequences where you're like, oh, is this in black and white? Because it's, it is unclear if it is in black and white or if it is, just very serious grayscale or what's going on there. And it works very well within the movie. And then what happens is, too, it's not just them reducing it, because the greens in other areas, when they have the greens on screen, they pop. When they have the reds and the deeper blues that aren't like a muted, almost grayish blue, they pop a little bit too, and it really does add to a more robust color scheme. And the thing is, too, the movie uses light in a really interesting way as well, because, again, it is it is what's the word I'm looking for here? It is a movie set before electricity and before really, widespread systemic lighting in a lot of places. So it is almost as if the movie is only lit by moonlight and torches. And if they're recreating moonlight in the movie, they do it very well. If that's what's happening, and they're recreating moonlight with practical, lighting fixtures and things like that, it is done very well in the movie. And I think the same thing goes for the fires for those other sequences. Oh, Willem Dafoe is really good in his role too. Very small role, but he's very good in it. Very, very good movie. It's gonna be hard for it to not make my. I would say if it doesn't make my end of year top 10, then that bodes very well for the rest of what's coming. If it does make my end year top 10, I would not be surprised. But either way, I'm very, very, very well done movie. This is a movie that I cannot wait to watch a second time. I would 100% buy this on DVD. As you know, that is my big endorsement for a movie, is do I buy it on DVD to watch again at my leisure? And in this case, that is a resounding yes. So we'll wrap up there for today. I don't think there was a new episode of The Flash this week, for reasons that escape me, but because I don't think there was a new episode of The Flash, there is none of that. Maybe I'll use tonight to catch up on Julia. I do also need to continue my quest into, what's that game called? My quest into Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga. I am in episode 3 now. And I've almost gotten enough studs to do that fucking 2 times bullshit. So that way I can get studs faster. So we'll wrap up there for today. Until our next episode, have a great rest of your week.